Welcome to Jon Jon Radio, RiVA City's #1 radio show, now on radio. Here, my co-host, my co-pilot, Coach.
Today we travel to Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, to speak with Dr. Marcia Brown.
Good morning.
Good morning, Soror, Dr. Marcia Brown. Can you explain what the Global Scholars Foundation does?
The Global Scholars Foundation changes the lives of young people in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
The program has 4 components. The first component is language and culture. We teach them about the language and the culture of people around the world. The second component is financial literacy. The third component is college readiness. And this year we're adding an entrepreneurship component to the program. Exactly. And we teach this to our young people in Washington, D.C. from ages 14 to 18.
Can you elaborate on the entrepreneurial piece?
Yes. We have an actual entrepreneur. He's taught this to college students. He's going to come and teach it to our students this coming up summer. And it teaches young people how to be an entrepreneur, how to work for themselves, the components of starting a business plan, starting a business, what business they could go into, just being an entrepreneur for themselves in the upcoming future.
That's excellent.
Awesome. Definitely awesome.
We think so.
So the Global Scholars Foundation emphasizes that students need to become global citizens. Why do you feel that that's important?
We want them to realize that the world is bigger than the 4 quadrants of Washington, D.C. And when we've taken students out of the world and we've taken them to places like South Africa. We went to the school systems in South Africa, and a lot of the students cried because they couldn't believe that other students around the world didn't have books, basic things like books, chalk, and a good setting to learn. So they're learning that places in the world are just different and that they're unique and that we can learn from others as well as they can learn from us. So we want them to be global citizens, to realize that when they graduate from college, they don't have to get a job in the place where they attended college. Mm-hmm. They can get a job internationally. Anywhere in the world that they want to live and travel and work, it's open to them. So we want them to realize that the world is bigger than the 4 quadrants of Washington, D.C. and to take advantage of it.
And it's definitely great to experience all walks of life.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
And you spoke about South Africa. How do students get to choose where they go or where they study or what language they study?
Good question. When the program first started, it was the China Challenge, and 3 groups of children went to China. Mm-hmm. China was the hot spot, if you will, at the time. So we took 3 different cohorts to China. We visited 4 or 5 cities in China. So it started as groups of children going to China, going back and forth to China. And when Mr. Brewer came on as executive director, he said, well, maybe we should change our location so that we can be global, because China is just one destination. So we wanted to view the whole world. So our first trip outside of China was to South Africa and Brazil. And that was chosen very strategically because we wanted our students, most of them are African American. Okay. So we wanted them to see the pathways that they have traveled to America, from Africa, slave trade, to Brazil, to the United States.
That's pretty powerful.
So it was incredibly powerful because when we went to Salvador Bahia, we learned about how the Africans came to Brazil and cultivated the land, and they grew the food, and people thrived. And so then we went to South Africa and made the connection. So it's not haphazardly like we want to see the places that have the best beaches. It's really an educational, well thought out tour why we're going to these places. So when we went to South Africa, it was amazing.
How long did you stay?
We stayed in Brazil a week, and we stayed in South Africa for a week.
Wow. Can you take us next time?
Next time. You have to work. You have to work as a chaperone, herding all of these students. So this summer we're going to Spain and Morocco.
Wow.
So the same thing. We're going to Spain, and then we're going to travel through the trek of the Moors down to Morocco, tying it back into our culture. So we don't just haphazardly say, we're going to go there. We kind of think about where
everything you do is with a purpose.
It's strategic, yes.
How are the costs offset?
The costs are offset by some of our sponsors, but A Street picks up the biggest tab. So if you know anybody who wants to contribute and make this thing grow, we'll welcome all supporters, all donations.
All supporters.
Yes, but we do have supporters right now, and we're currently seeking more and more supporters because the travel portion is expensive, but we don't want kids not to participate because of the costs. So we are every day seeking supporters and sponsors, yes.
Speaking of the students, how are they selected into the program?
So we send out the applications to all the high schools, charter and traditional public schools. You have to be a student in a DC public or public charter school. We don't take private school students.
Okay. And why is that?
Because we feel that private school students, their schools offer so many programs that they can get involved in, and perhaps their parents can pay for them to travel,
Yeah.
whereas other students may not be able to afford to travel, and we don't want this to be cost prohibitive for students to do. So we send out the applications to all the public and public charter school students, and they send in the application. We don't have a GPA requirement because you don't need to be a rocket scientist to do
That's
this.
true.
You just need to be committed, which we strongly encourage the students to be committed. So then they fill out the application, they send in 3 letters of recommendation, one from a teacher, one from a counselor, and one from the parent. A parent has to write a letter of recommendation for their own child. Everyone who sends in an application gets an interview, because we know students are not the best presented on paper, so they come in and we get a feel for who's going to be committed to the program, and we make our selection. We generally choose between 15 and 20 kids a year.
How many apply usually?
We've had, this year was our largest year, we had 45. And a lot of people say, oh, everybody in the world should apply to this program, but a lot of kids, A, don't believe someone is going to take them out of the country for free. B, a lot of kids don't want to commit to the year-long program, because the travel portion is the last thing that we do. So they have to stay with us the year prior to traveling before they can
So
travel.
the year prior to traveling, what are you doing? Workshops, seminars?
Yes, 6 weeks in the
Doing the
summer,
service?
we work with the students on site here. It's just like they're coming to work every single day from 9 to 12, and each week is broken up by theme. So one week we're working on communication, one week we're working on leadership, the next week we're working on working in group settings. So we're training them, we're teaching them, they're working a little bit, they're working on their resumes, letter writing skills, research skills. So they're doing a combination of all of this. So it's kind of like school, but not school.
Right.
And then in the fall
The
from...
fun part of school.
Fun part of school, right. Well, maybe. Well, from October to June, they're here 2 Saturdays a month, working with a language instructor, studying the language of the country we're going to visit. So this time around, they studied Spanish. Last time around was Portuguese, and the group before that studied Mandarin.
Wow.
So in between that, we also take them on field trips to local colleges. And we've gone as far as Harvard this year and our local schools here. So we do a gamut of everything, trying to just get them ready. And also in the summer, they do a workshop, a financial literacy workshop, which is another component. This summer will be the first summer that our entrepreneur component will be added. So we're looking forward to that.
Exclusive.
Yes.
So when the students leave the program, I'm sure you still have relationships
Absolutely.
or ties with them. What is their involvement or their interaction with the program? Do they come back and volunteer?
Yes, they
chaperone?
come back. We've had some of our students to chaperone our South Africa trip last year, which was really interesting. This year would be the first year we've had a graduate since I started. I've been here 5 years. Ken has been back 5 years. So our first student, Janetta Bratcher, graduated from Howard in
Shout
4
out.
years. Yes, Janetta. 4 years with a degree in computer science. And she's now applying for jobs internationally. She told me she was a little afraid, but she did it anyway because she has traveled every year since she first went to China with us.
That's amazing.
She has traveled every single year. She went back to Asia. She's been to Africa. She's been all over the world.
That's a huge
Yes,
confidence boost.
yes. I mean, once they go, they get the bug. They want to keep going and going and going and going and going. So we keep in touch with them just to see what they're doing, see if they need any help, see if they need any recommendations. They've come back to work as interns. Anything that we can do to help them with their personal life, professional life, we're there for them. So they come back and they talk to the students about how the program, not just the trip, but the entire program enriched their lives.
That's really
Awesome.
incredible.
Yes.
And the Global Scholars Foundation was birthed by the H Street
Yes.
Community Development Corporation.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on your relationship with them?
The H Street Community Development Corporation is the
Ooh, that's a tongue twister.
H Street Community Development Corporation birthed Global Scholars Foundation. And as I mentioned previously, it started as the China Challenge. So about 8 years ago, my predecessor had the great idea to come up with this program to take children out of the country, to teach them Chinese. Because at the time, learning Chinese, going to China, the China trade, it was huge. Still probably is to some degree. So she came up with the idea, let's teach some kids Chinese and take them to China. And so it has evolved, if you will, since then. H Street is the parent company and GSF is the baby. We're under the umbrella.
Oh.
So Ken, my executive director, is heavily involved in every facet of the program, supporting it as much as he possibly can financially, but also with sweat equity. I mean, we love these kids like they're our own kids. So
Right.
we are deeply involved in their lives and they're deeply involved in the company. So H Street CDC is the parent and we're the child. We're just under the umbrella. So that's the relationship.
Okay.
Now, do you receive any support from DC elected officials?
Not directly, not necessarily. They know about, most of them know about the program. We have about 6 new council members now, but in the past we've had relationships with the mayor and the council chair and some of the council members. But we send the application to them, so they're, they have it, they know about our program.
Yeah, aware of it.
They're aware of it, but we don't receive any financial contributions from them.
And I read recently that your students took a trip to see John Lewis.
Yes. That was amazing.
In April.
Yes. We went to see Congressman John Lewis, and we had to wait a little while. We thought we weren't going to be able to see him because they had a vote, but he showed up and he sat and he talked with the students for about an hour. And he talked about his book, March 1 and March 2. He signed those books for the kids. They both had read March 1. He signed them. He was gracious. He took pictures. We also took the students to see the movie Selma.
Nice.
Before we went to see John Lewis. So the program has 4 components, but anything that we see that the students may benefit from, we also tie that in. So when Selma came out, we took the students to see Selma. We took them to dinner, then we took them to the movies, and then we talked about the movie. Eric Jones, who you met a few minutes ago, he was part of SNCC. So Eric came and had a roundtable discussion with the students, firsthand information, ins and out about SNCC that you wouldn't get anywhere else, exclusive information. And the students, we think sometimes that they know more than they know, but when you talk about the civil rights, and one student remarked that she didn't understand that the violence was so real back then. And, it took Eric to paint a real life picture for it. Yeah, it was real.
When I talk to students, they don't realize it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago.
Absolutely.
The Global Scholars Foundation is changing these teenagers' lives.
Yes. And just when we think they're not listening, they are listening to what we're saying. And we're happy about that.
You're doing great work.
Thank you.
Is there anything you would like to say to your students or DC or the world or the viewers of Jon Jon Radio?
Yes. Thank you for coming up from Tidewater area, Richmond, right?
Yes,
to interview us,
RiVA
to
City.
talk to RiVA City.
Thanks for the breakfast.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the
Can't have a meeting
breakfast.
without breakfast. To interview us about our program, we often say this is the best kept secret, and we don't want it to be a secret any longer. We want to expose it to the world. We want these kids to be exposed to as much good stuff as possible. And with your help, you can go to our website, www.globalscholarsfoundation.com, and you can make a donation on our website. We're happy to take any amount. If you want to call us, our phone number is 202-544-8353, and you can contact me, and we'll be happy to take up a donation. That website is globalscholarsfoundation.org. I'm sorry, we just changed it. We just actually got a new website. And thank you guys for coming and hearing our story.
Thank you, Dr. Marcia Brown.
You're welcome.
Jon Jon Radio.